All right, so now that we've worked through some of the real-time dashboards, I thought I'd get into more of the advanced dashboarding features that are available to you within Brightmetrics. And to do that, I'm going to focus more on the historical side. So I'm going to create a new dashboard here, and again, I'm going to build it from scratch, and we'll just call this historical 30-day. So I want to look back at data, and this could be any time range, but I want to look at data in this example that's 30 days old. And what's nice about this is we can set these charts to automatically update, so it's always looking back 30 days. So whenever you view the dashboard, it's always that day minus 30 days. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new chart, and we've been working up to this point out of the real time, but now I'm going to do the ECC piece, and this is all historical data. If you have work groups, same thing, you're just going to choose ShoreTel though for your data source group, and the data source instance, choose the ShoreTel queue data. Alright, so within ECC I have the option of group or agent data or even service data. I'm going to focus in on group right now, and I'm going to take my time range, I'm going to change that to a specific number of days, and there's my 30, and this can be any time range. I'm going to go ahead and look at a bar chart for this, and I'll change it to vertical. And maybe I just want to get an idea for what my busy days are, and even maybe my busy hours. So I'm going to look at, just to start, a basic metric of call count all, so total calls coming into this group. And I'm going to filter or categorize this, not filter, I'm going to categorize or group this by, not group name, but let's start with weekday. So what I'm doing is I'm going to look at total number of calls coming in over a 30-day period of time, and I'm going to group it by weekday. And I'm going to go ahead and filter this by my group names, and I'll just choose 3 groups here and apply. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go into the Advanced tab and expand this to 2 columns so my chart is wider and shows more data. All right, so you can see what we've done here. We're looking at total calls over a 30-day period of time broken down by the day of the week. So very quickly we can see that Tuesday is our busier day. And I can do the same thing even with hour. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this chart so I don't have to rebuild from scratch. And now I'm going to go back into it, and I'm going to change this by hour, easiest hour. So very, very quickly here, we can see what days and what hours we need to be careful with our staffing. You'll notice though that a lot of this chart is including hours of operation that were closed. So I can go back in here and filter those out. So I'll go ahead and go into our hour filter, and I'm going to say only show selected values for 8 through 5. Apply. And now that cleans up the chart pretty nicely. So another type of chart I like to show from a historical perspective is called a time series chart. And these are really nice because you can compare data or different data points that are happening at the same dates or times. And I'll show you what that looks like. So with a time series, you can either do daily or hourly. All right, so I'll choose hourly, and maybe I want to look at just yesterday's data here. And I want to look at my abandoned percentage in this chart. And again, I'm going to filter down between those 3 groups that I've been using as my example. And I'm going to expand this to 2 columns and apply. Okay, so here's my percentage of calls that were abandoned yesterday. So you can see that at 2 o'clock we had a little spike there. We really didn't have any abandoned calls at any other time throughout the day, but we did have a spike up to 20%. Before I show you another chart and how we can correlate or compare data points at that same period of time, I'm going to go in, and one of the neat things you can do, and I like doing this for abandoned reports or abandoned dashboard charts, is we can set target values or target ranges. So because we're looking at percentage here, percentage of the calls abandoned, if you've heard my spiel on abandoned calls, our target abandoned call range should always be about 4 to 8%. That's an acceptable range of abandoned calls, and there's a reason for why you don't want to be trying to focus on abandoned percentages being at 0%, and I'll get into that in a different video. So now that I've got my target range of 4 to 8 and I apply that, it actually graphs that out on my chart so I can see where I'm at with my actual abandoned percentages to what my goal is. All right, so now that we've got that chart, I'm going to go ahead and create another one. And again, I'll just copy this so I don't have to build everything from scratch. I'm going to go back in, and now I'm just going to look at total call volume over that period of time. I'm going to remove my target range there because that doesn't apply. So you'll notice that now that I have these two time series graphs in my dashboard, this red line appears at that same moment in time between all time series charts. So now I can start to compare and correlate data. So you'll notice that my spike with abandon correlates with the same time where my call volume increases. Oh, and I'm showing percentage of calls in my label there. It's because I copied the chart. So if I go back into chart options, go into advanced, I can change the label. Back down, there we go. So my total calls increased at that time. There's a peak there, and that corresponds to the peak in abandon in my abandoned percentage. So you can see the use there, especially as you start to develop multiple time series charts, being able to compare data, different data points at the same moment in time, really, really useful from a dashboarding perspective.